I'm George Lucaci.
And I'm Lisa Allen. You're watching Community Conversation, televised from the HTTV studios in Summit, New Jersey.
Today, our guest is Tom Malinowski. Tom is an American diplomat and most recently served as Assistant Secretary of State for Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor from 2014 to 2017. Tom also served as Senior Director on the National Security Council at the White House in the Clinton administration. From 2001 to 2013, Tom was the Washington Director for Human Rights Watch in Washington, D.C. He graduated from the University of California and was a Rhodes Scholar. He is the Democratic nominee in New Jersey's 7th Congressional District and will face Republican incumbent Leonard Lance in the upcoming midterm election in November. That's next month. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you so much, George. How are you?
So one of the things we just want to get to right away is a little bit of your history, how you define yourself, and why you decided to run.
Well, it's the first time I've ever run for office. I'm not a career politician. I am a career public servant. I'm an immigrant to this country. I grew up to New Jersey after coming here at age 6 with my mother from Poland when it was a communist country. I grew up with all kinds of amazing opportunities, the important opportunities that New Jersey once gave to its middle class. And I took that experience to a career of serving my country here and around the world. I decided to run because it seemed to me after the 2016 election that a lot of the values and ideals that I was fighting for on behalf of our country around the world were coming under attack here at home. And because I saw our state of New Jersey getting the short end of the stick on everything from education to infrastructure to healthcare to taxes, especially in the last year following this, the tax bill that the Congress passed. And I wanted to do something about it. This midterm election is a really extraordinary opportunity for our district because we are one of the very few congressional districts in the United States that is so closely divided that our choice could very well tip the balance in the House of Representatives for the next 2 years. So here I am, and we've got a little over a month to go.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. What have you learned going into the campaign? Everybody has an expectation of what they think they're going to find and what they're going to be passionate about. What have you found out about New Jersey that you didn't really know before you got there, before you started campaigning?
I think I sensed this before, but it's been interesting to confirm my assumption that actually most folks out there tend to agree on the big issues that we're debating in this race. We seem to be divided into tribes. We seem to be very polarized. If you look in the media, it feels like there are two Americas out there looking at the same set of facts and seeing two completely different things. And yet, if you sit down in people's living rooms and talk to them out at county fairs, you talk about taxes, you talk about healthcare, you talk about gun violence, you talk about even our country's position in the world. And most folks are extremely reasonable, and they're looking for practical solutions. And in those conversations, they sometimes forget whether they're Democrats or Republicans. And that gives me hope for our country at a time when there are a lot of reasons for anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you get to Washington, D.C., what do you think would differentiate you from the last 10 years, at least as far as this district is concerned? How do you think that, again, as I asked before, defining yourself and as a differentiator right now?
Yeah. Well, I don't think, with respect to our current congressman, we've had very effective representation in Washington for the last 10 years. I can't think of a single important piece of legislation that he has authored or co-authored. And when it comes to the issues that the voters ask me about all of the time, the loss of our property tax deductions, for example, the rising cost of health care, the epidemic of gun violence, the steady deterioration of our public infrastructure in New Jersey, it's very hard to point to any actions that the United States Congress under this leadership has taken that improve our lives. And so my focus is on results, not just what I can individually do, but being part of a majority in the House of Representatives that will deliver for the voters of my district on those issues.
I have to say, I think that Jersey faces a lot of issues, and we've interviewed both Republicans and Democrats, and I think no matter what side of the aisle you sit on, that these issues are so tenuous and so complex that any one person can't solve them. We have transportation issues, we have pension issues. New Jersey is $100 billion at best in debt from healthcare and pensions. So how would you go about making a difference and digging in and partnering with with rallying people across the state to gain support, and also working with your cohorts in Washington, D.C. to get anything done? Because I don't think it's easy for anyone to get anything done in Jersey.
It's not, and I don't think the issue is rallying people in New Jersey, because again, I hear the same things from voters across the aisle in terms of what they want from Washington, D.C. Let's take a practical issue. We've got a tunnel that we need to build between New Jersey and New York, the Gateway Tunnel.
Yeah.
And it seemed last year as if there was agreement in Washington, including from the Trump administration, to build this, because this shouldn't be a partisan issue.
Right.
And what happened? The president decided that he didn't want to do it. And it felt almost as if he decided he didn't want it because we wanted it, because he didn't like our congressional representatives, or because he wanted to use it as a bargaining chip to build a wall or some other priority that he wanted. And instead of pursuing the tunnel, instead of pursuing infrastructure spending, which New Jersey and the country needs, what we got was a $2 trillion tax cut, which has mostly benefited a few people at the very top and corporations that got a huge rate cut from 35 to 21%. Here's one little piece of trivia. One company under the tax bill, Berkshire Hathaway, this year is getting a $30 billion tax cut. $30 billion. The price of the Gateway Tunnel project is $30 billion. For the price of one tax cut for one company, we could have built this entire project. And the punchline to this bad joke is that Warren Buffett, the head of Berkshire Hathaway, didn't even want the tax cut, right? So that was a choice that was made. People did come together in Washington to make a choice, but it was the wrong choice. And we need leaders in Washington who will make a different and better choice for the people of New Jersey.
Can I just say something, George?
Of course.
I have to say, if he doesn't want the tax cut, then why doesn't he say, I'll donate the money? I mean, I know that sounds ludicrous, but he's always out there and he's always saying, I don't need the money, but I don't see him giving it back into where it's needed.
Well, I think he actually gives a lot to charity. I mean, he's one of these billionaires who has been lobbying his fellow billionaires to give most of their money away. But look, we're not going to build public infrastructure in Washington by asking for charity from billionaires. This is the function of government. It's one of the core functions of government to build bridges and tunnels and roads. And if our government is not going to do this, well, there's not really any alternative. We have to hold the people who are in government accountable. And this is something where the current leadership in the Congress, it almost feels like they have it in for states like New Jersey. We get 72 cents back from Washington on every dollar that we send there in taxes. And that's something, if our representatives in New Jersey are not turning that around, we need new leadership.
The scenario, if I was to say to you, there's so many people leaving New Jersey, I'm going to leave New Jersey. I can't afford property taxes anymore. It's hard to get into the city. It's a hassle. I'm going to go down to Florida or North Carolina. It's a little bit easier. How would you say, wait, stay here because things are going to change? And here's the little I can do, because one person can't do a lot, but if in fact you could do more than what one individual can do, how would you say, George, stay in New Jersey? What would you do?
Well, first of all, many people still choose to stay in New Jersey, and many people still come to New Jersey because we are a wonderful state where we have chosen to pay for amazing schools. We have chosen to pay for good public services. We are blessed with this extraordinary geographic location, a beautiful state very, very close to one of the economic hubs of the world. So we have extraordinary advantages that do inspire people to come here and to stay here. You mentioned the two big problems, the high tax rate and and the increasing difficulties in getting around. And those seem like intractable problems, but in fact, I think there is pretty much a bipartisan consensus in Washington that we need to do something about both of them. Most reasonable people think the tax bill, which took away our property tax deductions, was not just bad for New Jersey, it was economic malpractice for the country. And there's also a bipartisan consensus that we need investment in infrastructure. Why don't these things happen? Why don't these bipartisan things happen in the US Congress? Well, the leadership right now, folks like Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan, are terrified of the base of their party, which is a small minority in the United States, but exercises disproportionate power. And they won't allow reasonable bipartisan legislation even to get a vote. That's what we can change in 2019. It's an anxious moment in our country's history, but we can take advantage of that anxiety to elect a different kind of Congress.
I feel the tenor is really difficult, and I think that both bases on either side are entrenched. And I'm concerned that we keep sending people who are unable to work across the aisle. We were talking before the show, there's a big moderate middle out there. There are independents, moderates. How are you going to speak to them? Because the Democrats will vote for you, the Republicans probably won't. How are you going to get that large middle to work together?
Well, first of all, I am definitely trying to inspire the middle to vote for me, and I meet Republicans and Republican-leaning independents every day who say they're doing so. We were knocking on a door in Hunterdon County a few days ago and met an elderly lady who told us, I've been a Republican for 89 years and I'm going to leave as a Democrat and vote for you. And that's a story that happens in one way or another every day. I am a Democrat. I'm a proud Democrat, and I stand for many of the things that have made, I think, the Democratic Party a great contributor to our country over the years. I also like to say that I could describe myself as fiscally responsible, as deeply patriotic, as pro-military, as a believer that our highest national officials should be held to the highest moral standards. And when I tell people that, and I say, if that's all you knew about me 10 years ago, what political party would you say I belong to? And they all kind of laugh and say, well, Republican. Mm-hmm. Those core American values that many Republicans identified with and still do identify with have not really been ably represented, I think, by the Republican leadership we have right now in the White House especially, and in the Congress. So I think there's an opportunity for a Democrat like me to seize that middle ground without giving up any of my values.
Well, Tom, let me ask you, you might have had to seize the middle ground between 2001 and 2013 as you worked across several administrations. You worked across the Republican and the Democratic administration, and I know you were a good friend of John McCain's. So tell me what you did there to actually work those kind of situations where there was bipartisanship that you actively enhanced.
Well, I've been privileged to work on issues that are still mostly bipartisan in our country: national security, human rights. There are as many Republicans as Democrats in Washington who care passionately about America promoting democratic values around the world. And much of what I've gotten done, certainly in the United States Congress, has been working across the aisle. I got to know Senator McCain in 2005 when we worked together to pass the bill that definitively banned torture in our country after 9/11, when unfortunately that became an issue. We went on to work together on everything from the Magnitsky Act, which imposed sanctions on human rights abusers in Russia, to how America responded to the revolutions in the Arab world in 2011 and 2012. We also disagreed on some things, and we enjoyed our disagreements and respected each other in those debates as well. I came to know many other Republicans, particularly in the US Senate, and found that on those issues we could still work together. Now, we have to be honest, it's harder on issues like a Supreme Court nomination. It's harder on issues like health care, but it's not impossible. I've done it before. I've seen others do it. I think it can be done. And I think in this moment of great almost national emergency. As much as we are polarized, there are also good people on both sides who are so frightened of the polarization that they are willing to come together for the sake of the country. I want to be one of them.
I think too, when you talk about issues, everybody wants a yes or no answer. We like a silver bullet, right? And so they're wicked problems. There's many solutions to different, transportation. There's no one answer for transportation, right? And so what are your top 3 priorities? Because there's a long list of things that need to get done in Jersey. But what would you say your top 3 priorities are if you were to get elected?
So number 1, we have to get the SALT deduction back. And I would like a deeper re-examination of that tax bill because I think it's bankrupting America. But at the very least, I think we need to get our property tax deductions back because it's killing us in New Jersey. Over 5 or 10 years, people are going to start moving out in very large numbers. Number 2, we already talked about it, investment in infrastructure. Absolutely key priority for New Jersey. I'd like to serve on the Transportation Committee if I'm elected to the House and work on that. Number 3, something I've worked on a lot in the past is corruption. I helped to lead our country's global efforts combating corruption when I was in the State Department. We learned some lessons in the 2016 election about how vulnerable our political system is to money, to dark money, from within our country and even from outside our country. I've already been in touch with other Democratic candidates running in the country this year. We are writing to our leadership in Washington to say, if we are elected, if we Democrats flip the House, we want to see very, very early, among the very first bills, a comprehensive package of legislation dealing with campaign finance, with ethics, with protecting our democracy against foreign interference.
Maybe we just go into a more global perspective now, and I know people are concerned about SALT and transportation is critical, but has there been or there a diminution of our stature globally? It seems like we've changed a lot of things. I know NAFTA too, we have to look in a little bit more closely to see exactly what that's done, what we've done with Iran, even our relationship with our allies. What do you think we should do, if in fact, to change this diminution that we've had?
Diminution of our status is a very diplomatic way to put it. And since I'm not a diplomat anymore, I'll put it more bluntly. We are the laughingstock of the world right now. We've gone from being the hope of the world to being the laughingstock of the world, and this is Putin's big victory. No, we have not lifted sanctions on Russia, but people around the world think that the United States of America, we've lost our minds. We are insulting our closest allies in the world, countries like Canada, like Great Britain, like France, like Germany, whose troops have fought and bled with us in war after war over the years. We have a president who, we're almost used to this, but we shouldn't be, who said that he and the dictator of North Korea fell in love. And he seemed to mean this seriously. We are befriending the world's autocrats and thugs and kleptocrats while turning away countries that share our values, walking away from international agreements and institutions, turning our backs on refugees who flee to this country because we are, in their eyes, the hope of the world. We can survive this for 3 or 4 years because America has built up so many reserves of trust and confidence around the world over decades. I worry that if it's more than 4 years, our children will inherit a very different, much less safe world.
Yes. So let's bring it local, because
Okay, sure.
you were talking about education,
Yes.
and there's some talk around how New Jersey is going to restructure our school system. So President Sweeney, Senate President Sweeney had said he wanted to reduce the number of school districts from around 600 to somewhere about half of that, and that every student would still be sitting in a classroom. They would just get rid of administration. But I don't know how you go from 600 districts, give or take, to almost 300, a little bit more than that, and not take children from their school. So as a parent with 2 boys in a great school system, I'm curious what you see from Jersey in terms of where are we headed with our education system. Are we going to be busing, I don't know how much you know, but are we going to be busing our kids out of Summit? Are they going to be staying in Summit, or the respective towns? But where do you think we should go in terms of the structure of the schools?
Boy, am I glad that that I'm not the governor or the state senate president dealing with the problems that they inherited from the last administration. Education is a state and local matter in New Jersey, as you well know. It's not a congressional matter, but this does, I think, bring us back to what I think is the fundamental issue for New Jersey in a congressional race, which is how we get the short end of the stick from Washington. No, there are not huge federal dollars that support public schools in New Jersey or anywhere else. But when we get 72 cents back for every dollar that we send, the state is under significantly greater pressure on everything from public health to infrastructure to education, which means that if we want to keep the great schools that we have, the great choices that we have for parents in the state of New Jersey, we have to raise property taxes. We have to bear the burden ourselves. We have to make cruel choices in terms of which public services we will and will not provide. So in that sense, when, for example, the Congress threatens to cut $1 trillion from Medicaid over the next 10 years to pay for these corporate tax cuts. Now, Medicaid is not a school funding program, but it does support a huge number of public health programs in the state of New Jersey. If we don't have that, then that's another cruel choice that we're going to have to make, and we may have to rob education in order to deal with the opiate crisis or make sure that people are not turned away from the hospital when they're sick. So my main job is to make sure, if I'm elected, that the United States Congress, the federal government, is partnering with New Jersey to meet our problems.
You know, it's funny, going back again to Democrat, Republican. I think many people don't even know what a Democrat or Republican is today. I mean, because of the tribalism that's occurred here. And I think before the show we brought up a little bit of what in fact is an Eisenhower Democrat. You know, I told you that my two favorite presidents are Teddy Roosevelt and Eisenhower, realizing that they're Republican. And I don't know how you define that anymore, or how people define with past presidents, because I think Eisenhower might have been kind of a moderate Democrat today.
Yeah, well, Teddy Roosevelt was the original progressive,
Yeah.
which is now a term associated with the other party. And Eisenhower was a great American leader. But imagine how Eisenhower would have reacted to a president of either party insulting our allies and saying that NATO was a bad deal for the United States. Imagine how Eisenhower would have reacted to kidnapping children at the border because they were asking for asylum in our country. Imagine how Eisenhower would have reacted to attacks on the FBI and on the Justice Department, calling the FBI a cancer on our society, which the President of the United States recently did. Imagine how Eisenhower would have reacted to a party that calls itself fiscally conservative but is giving us trillion-dollar deficits as far as the eye can see. I certainly hope Eisenhower would stay a Republican, actually, and I say that as a Democrat, a partisan Democrat. But I think he would fight like hell to bring his party back to its principles. And I know that if something like that happened to my party, well, I certainly hope I would fight like hell to bring the Democratic Party back to its principles. We need a two-party system in this country. We need that balance. We need that creative tension. And right now, I think we're not getting it in a healthy way.
And that's something you've talked about for a long time, Lisa. You and I about bipartisanship, going across the aisle, trying to communicate with everybody.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose that, and I think it's critical, and I think you're a big proponent of that. And I think, Tom, you're somebody that talks about and could go across the aisle, as you've been there before.
I do, but you also, bipartisanship isn't a mushy principle. It's not lowest common denominator. Sometimes if you believe in moderation, you've got to fight for it. Sometimes you've got to go to war for moderation when it's under attack. And so we do need leaders in both parties who, when they see fundamental lines being crossed, lines of decency, lines of respect for differences, lines of truth, telling the truth, being crossed, we've got to be willing to fight like hell to defend those lines. So moderation in defense of moderation is no virtue, to paraphrase Barry Goldwater.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so hard with the day with social media in this day and age because everybody has a truth, right? We know there is a universal big T truth, but everybody has their version of the truth. And sifting through social media, it's changed how we.
When I was growing up, we had 4 stations: ABC, NBC, CBS, and public radio. And now we have literally tens of thousands of sources of news, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. Everybody's a source of news.
Yeah.
And who gets the attention? How do people get that attention? It's interesting that that there's been such a change as far as what is real and what is not, and what the truth is, as you said, Tom. It's difficult.
And we're not going back to, the evening news with Walter Cronkite, unfortunately. But we can put pressure on the social media companies to take more responsibility. Now, their argument. Their argument is, we're not media companies.
Right.
We're just platforms, and everybody can do what they want on our platform. But they actually do have editors on Facebook, on Twitter, on Google, editors that decide what we are going to see. They're not human. They're algorithms. But they function the same way. There are choices being made about what you are going to see when you go online, what news you're going to see. And the algorithms are written in a way that takes you deeper and deeper and deeper into extreme content, because whatever you see that you like, you're going to get more of what you like.
Sure.
And there's not an arrow pointing in the other direction that's going to take you back to a conversation like this. So, and here Congress can play a role in putting pressure on these companies to shape up and to take responsibility. And then all of us as citizens have to play a role. We need to teach digital literacy to our kids in school so that they are smarter than we are.
And that's a conversation and a whole session unto itself.
Yes.
So I want to thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, George.
For
Thank
giving
you,
us
Lisa.
a perspective on what you've done and your campaign. And that's all the time we have. So we want to thank you again, and hope that wish you good luck in the next 4 weeks.
Yeah. Thank you for coming, and good luck.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
So, and we want to thank you, to our viewers, for watching today, and thank Tom for his time. If you want to see more shows like this on Hometown Television, log on to hometowntv.org, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Instagram. Have a great day. Thank you.